your podcast all about embodied healing and sacred sensuality. I am Tanya Hirsch, and this podcast is intended to guide you home to your truth and feminine power. Each episode is designed to inspire you to create a pleasure-filled life that is in alignment with your soul. Let's drop the mask and dive right in.
Your feminine wisdom that reminds us of our infinity, our divinity.
Welcome back, my loves, to the Soul Naked podcast. Wow, what a year. I've been wanting to sit down and record an update since May, and every single time I sat down, another portal opened. There hasn't been a single day that hasn't been intense. 2023, if I would sum it up, it's like blasted open expansion. Like, I don't even have the words of what happened last year. It feels like I've lived 10 lifetimes where everything has been stripped away. I've been blasted open in my multidimensionality. I had, just so much going on. And today I would love to give you an update of what's happening, of what has changed, and also why it's been so quiet and why I haven't been sharing so much. So I feel to start, by the way, it's 1 p.m. Bali time. I'm in Bali right now, and I've been trying to sleep since 10 p.m. And it's the first time I can feel this call inside of me that I need to share the story. I haven't been feeling this call for over 6 months. So I was like, okay, if I can't sleep, then I can at least grab my phone and record a voice memo. So excuse the voice quality. This is in pitch black in my bed, like a creep with my phone. All right, so I feel to understand what has been happening, I need to take you back into November 2022, because this is when my life exploded into a different timeline, a different dimension, into a complete different direction. As you know, before I was living in Morea, I had given up my old life. I thought I had arrived, I thought this is where I'm going to stay for the rest of my life, where I'm going to raise my daughter, where I'm going to create a community one day. And that was set. Like, Morea was something that I did not even imagine giving up, because it's just the first place ever that feels like home to me. If you know my story, you know that I never felt home in Germany, and that I gave up my life for a picture and visions that I had for 15 years. And it was a pretty big deal, and I owe Morea so much. But when I left to Mexico in November, end of November 2022, I joined a Bufo and ayahuasca retreat. And I have shared about the Bufo experience, which was very pleasurable. I became one with God. I was communicating with different beings, and it was just like a coming home feeling. Like, when I came back into my body, and there's a whole podcast episode about it if you want to dive into this. It was amazing. I felt like a goddess on legs. Like, imagine all of the density and all of the humanness being taken away, still being connected to your emotions, but just like being so connected to light and love, and it felt amazing. And then the next day, it was the night of the ayahuasca ceremony, and it was my second ayahuasca ceremony. I have a podcast episode in German about my first experience, which was very gentle. And I thought this was the ceremony I was least afraid of. We also did Kambo, and temazcal and cacao. And I was like, ayahuasca, I know this medicine, she's gentle. I finally see things because I'm not visual, and I'm just going to have a beautiful journey as last time. And it has taken me 13 months, I think it is now. And I'm still integrating, but it's the first time I finally feel, ready to share about this experience. And there's not a single day that has passed that I'm not thinking about it or being drawn back to it. So I'm gonna share a little bit about the ceremony, because this was, I feel like, the gate opener for everything that has unfolded. And I think it's essential for you to understand what has happened after this. So the difference in these ceremonies was, by the way, I'm never sharing who I'm doing the ceremonies with, because I deeply believe if you're ready for, it doesn't matter which medicine, it will come to you. So just a side note. So from all the other ceremonies, I was the first to go, and in ayahuasca, because I was so sure that I'm gonna have a beautiful experience, I was the last to drink the cup. I only had 1 cup. The last time I had 3. And the first hour we meditated, and I didn't feel anything. I just felt this horrible taste in my mouth. It was really sour and bitter, much worse than the one I had the last time. So I was like, maybe it's not working. And I was already thinking, oh my God, if I need another cup, I don't know if I can hold it in. And I was very much in my mind. And the difference was that it was in pitch darkness. There was no light. There were a lot of shamans and medicine people holding the space and singing Icaros after the 1-hour meditation. So it was 1 hour in silence, pitch black, and then it was like a gong, and then they started playing music. And last time everybody was in white. There was crystals in the middle. There were 10 women in the center circle, and we were all sitting around. And they were singing all night, and there was so much light and so much brightness. And I think that's why the journey was so bright. And I'm very connected to music and frequency. And of course, on plant medicine, this accelerates like 1,000 million times. And when I drank, when the medicine started to kick, it was almost simultaneously with the gong, when they said, okay, now the journey opens, and they started singing the Icaros. Some Icaros are really dark, and it took me straight away into these dark places. Like the roof suddenly started shaking, and I think it was the bat Icaros, because I just felt like 1,000,000 bats coming from the roof and coming down into my body. And I was like, fuck, what is this? Holy shit. I knew there's no turning back. I was like, okay, no matter what happens now, I can't get this out of my body. Like, it's happening, and I just need to surrender. And then I told myself, I'm safe. This is not real, even though it felt so real. And then it felt like almost a test if I'm ready to see and to experience what was about to come. So when the bats were gone and I calmed myself down, and my body became so heavy, and I remembered the medicine woman, the shaman, explaining, if you can, stay seated, it's very important. And I tried, I just couldn't. My body became so heavy. So I laid down, and then I traveled. My consciousness traveled out of my body, and I know this feeling. I know I'm a shapeshifter. I can travel into different dimensions. I can become different things. But this was on a whole other level. First, it was pretty fun because I'm not visual, and on plant medicine I see. So it's like leaning back, watching a movie, and I traveled up into a different dimension. First, there were dragons. This is also when the dragon dimension opened up for me, and I really connected to my inner dragon, and it helped me with my rage and my anger and resentment. And I love my inner dragon. Before, I didn't really believe in dragons, and now I have a really beautiful relationship to my inner dragon, and to dragons in general. And then it went further up into, which felt like a different galaxy almost. It didn't feel like our universe. It felt like a different universe. And then I saw colors that are not from this world, like holographic colors and flowers, but not really flowers, and different beings and aliens, and I communicated with them telepathically, and I've done this before, so this part I really enjoyed. And then some of these beings, it was weird because I was still aware that I have a body, but at the same time I was in a different dimension or even in a different galaxy. It's almost like I felt the avatar that is my human body. I was still aware, and at the same time my consciousness was somewhere completely else, telepathically communicating with different beings. And then I felt some of these beings coming into my body. And first I was a bit scared. I was like, what is happening? And my body started moving in a way that I could not consciously move my body, even if I tried. Single muscles moving in my face, in my back. There was not a chance that I could have made this up. And they were like, trust and surrender, just let this happen. You have a big mission, you need a healthy body, and we need to release some things over here. So they went into my jaw, into my ear, into my nose, all the areas that I have problems. And then they went into my womb, and generational trauma got released, and it exploded, and like this energy came out of my body. And my body just kept on moving. Like even single muscles on my back started moving, and like it was wild. It was kind of like, okay, I'm enjoying this, and also like super scary because I never experienced it like that before. And then it became even wilder. Then my consciousness traveled even further, definitely into far, far, far away galaxies until we don't know how big the universe is, but I was definitely light years away, like so far out. And then what happened was that I became source energy. I became universal consciousness. I became God, basically. And I feel like everybody has their own perception of what that looks like. I'm very connected to the universe and to this energy. And in my belief on what I've experienced over and over again is that we all have we come from the same source energy, and it's almost like a spark of that energy incarnates in this body. So we all have the same essence, but we want to experience ourselves through different experiences. So that's why we all have different gifts and talents and family stories. And of course, it's so complex, and I don't even want to go into this right now. But just to give you an image of what I believe to be true, and that's why I think I had this experience. And it doesn't mean that that's the only truth. Oh, there's a firefly flying right in front of my window. Again, I'm sitting in pitch black recording this in my bed. So I became universal consciousness. And this was a really scary experience. It was not like Bufo, where I became almost like the same energy, but it didn't feel like coming home. It felt like I know all the wisdom of the universe. I became that. I not only saw that, I became source energy. So I became this moving, expanding energy that I was holding the whole wisdom of the universe. I knew exactly, understood everything. I understood how planets are being created, every single thing, the whole wisdom of the universe. I embodied that through that universal consciousness. But the reason why it was scary was because I needed to let go of my human completely. And this was one of my biggest fears, always has been, that I won't make it back into this human body. Because we all know we live in a matrix, and I experienced so many glitches after that experience that, yeah, it's really scary sometimes to even think about not having this human experience anymore. Because I really love this human experience, even if it's dense sometimes and there's a lot of pain, there's also so much beauty. And that's what I experience after every single ceremony, that I'm kissing my body, and I'm so grateful that I get to have this life where we get to feel and to have the senses and to experience pleasure and emotions, because that's what makes it so special. So I needed to let go of my human completely. I wasn't even aware before, when the aliens came into my body and did the surgery. I was still aware that I had a body because I felt it in my body. But when I became source energy, there was no awareness of the body anymore. I shapeshifted into source energy, which meant I didn't have the body anymore. I didn't even have thoughts, emotions, nothing. I was just holding wisdom and this creation energy, but I wasn't even aware. I couldn't even think if I'm still alive, if I'm still breathing. There was no thought. And every time if I even was coming close to a thought, it would explode into a million pieces and I would morph into this energy again. And for what felt like eternity, what I explained in Bufo, when I experienced this moment of eternity that felt like a million lifetimes in 20 minutes. And I was sure that I didn't make it back also, but it was pleasurable, so I didn't really mind. In ayahuasca, it was different. It was like, fuck, I gave up the biggest gift, which is being alive, having a human experience. I gave it up. I took it for granted. Almost like the Saw movie, you know, when they weren't grateful for their lives and then they had these horrible experiences. It felt like that. I was like, fuck, what do I do with all this wisdom if I can't experience myself? So I became God, basically, not being able to experience myself through the senses. And I remembered how precious it is and how unique and like what in the universe needs to happen that we get to have this human experience. And we get so caught up by, oh, this is so hard, why is this happening to me? I had many moments in my life where it would have been easy to give up on this life. And I in this moment, I was like, oh my God, I gave away my biggest gift. I really thought I'm not making it back, even though I couldn't have a thought. This was just the overall sensation while I was this energy. And I needed to completely surrender for which felt again like hundreds of years. And then when I found peace with it, almost, when I was like, okay, that's it. Then the spirit of ayahuasca spit me out of that. And she's like, okay, now you're ready to see a purpose. And I was like, okay, great. And I traveled through all the different galaxies back into our universe and in front of Mother Earth. You know, these movies where you can see Mother Earth in front of you. So I was like floating in space. And then she said, I saw, I intuitively knew. And I also, maybe that's also important, I telepathically communicated with other beings. And they all said, oh, you're on Earth? You were on Earth? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh my God, you have no idea what we would do to have one day on Earth. We are lining up. We are like, we would do anything to just have one emotion or one thought, or like to have senses, to have an orgasm, to feel sadness and rage. Like we would die, like we would do anything to experience. And I was like, I think I gave it up. I think I took it too far. I think I gave up the biggest gift. And they were like, why are you here? You should be on Earth. And I was like, I don't know. I think I took it too far. And then I found myself floating in space in front of the Earth. And I tried to lift this blanket from the bottom of the Earth on top of the Earth. So from the bottom to the top. And I was like, it's too heavy. It's too heavy. I can't do this. And then she's like, as the spirit of ayahuasca was like, look around you. And then I looked around left and right, and I saw these powerful women next to me, shoulder to shoulder. Some of them I knew from my podcast or from Instagram, some I didn't know. And then we all together lifted this blanket of light on top of the earth, and it felt like a spiritual war. And I feel like that's what's happening right now, where we shift into a new timeline and where we consciously create the new earth through our embodiments and through our new way of being. That these dark forces tried to prevent us. And it really felt like a freaking battlefield where we needed to work so hard that we won in the end. So we made the light come back to the planet, but it was exhausting. When I came back into my body, or maybe a 10th part of my soul came back into my body, everybody was having fruits and were laughing and playing music and talking, and I couldn't even lift a finger. I felt like I've ran for 2 months straight without drinking water, without resting, without sleep. I felt like I've been in war. I've never felt so exhausted in my entire life. And it took me quite a while to come back into my body, as you can imagine. But this ceremony changed everything for me. Not only has it blasted open my multidimensionality, that I'm now connected to so many different dimensions, to my inner mermaid, to the dragon, to different beings, to Isis, to different goddesses. And I've always had kind of a connection, but it was like an explosion into more clarity, and the channel just got blasted open. And also, this was the point where the era of the lonely wolf ended. I mean, if you've followed my journey, you know that I literally moved to a tiny little island where I didn't know anyone. I didn't speak the language. I didn't have the finances to make it work. I had almost 2 years of complete solitude. I didn't have a community there. I almost didn't have friends there. I went through the darkest nights and purification and trauma healing cycles of my life. So many dark nights of the soul that I can't even count, where all this generational trauma and my trauma, of course not all, there's always more, but so much of it got released. And it was very lonely. I didn't have any support. There were days where I was throwing up in the toilet and I couldn't make it back to my bed. And I didn't have anyone who could take care of me. And it was really scary sometimes. It was really lonely. It was painful. I lost all of my friends when I made this decision. Not all, but like my best friend and many close friends. That was, I think, the hardest part for me on my spiritual journey, that fluctuation in sisterhood. And if you're not close with your family, you know how important friendships are. And if they break away, it can be really dark. But it was essential for me to heal my codependency and all my deepest, darkest wounds, the part of my psyche, of my subconscious that I would say 99% of the people would never go. And I didn't want to go. I understood why people would turn addicts or kill themselves, because it's unbearable and painful, and I don't even know how I did it. It's almost like my daughter made me. I have a spirit daughter that I know I'm going to be a mother of one day, and she kept me going. It's almost like I didn't even do this for me. I did it for her and the generation that's going to be born from me. So this cycle of density and pain and trauma ends with me. And that's what kept me going, to move through the density, to release what hasn't been felt for thousands of years in my lineage. And if you're the generational breaker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you're not alone in this. There's so many of us. And when I saw these women next to me, she also told me that blue is going to be very important for my journey, that we're going to be close friends one day. And I know this to be true. I don't know how and when, but I know that I'm going to be connected with her. Maybe you know her. She came up, like the word feminine leadership came, and her face and her name. She was like, you need to connect with her. And with this ceremony, the era of the lonely wolf ended. So before that, I have tried to do everything by myself. Yeah, everything was lonely and hard, and I struggled. And with that, it's almost like when my alien channel blasted open, after that ceremony, I didn't sleep for 10 days straight. For 10 days, I felt like a goddess on legs. Every single night, I went back into universal source energy, into universal consciousness. I had beings visiting. And if you know me personally, I'm a zombie of wreck without sleep. Even if I only sleep 5 hours, you don't want to talk to me, or I don't want to talk to you. I need like solid 7 or 8 hours of sleep to be human, because I travel a lot. When I sleep, my soul is up to some cosmic adventures. My human vessel needs a lot of rest. But in these 10 days, I was not tired. I was full of energy. I almost didn't eat. And I magnetized the most incredible people, situations, synchronicities. It almost didn't feel real. Like it felt like magic. Life became so beautiful and so magical. And then I had the most incredible 2 weeks in Tulum. And then I assisted Nadine's feminine leadership training in Costa Rica, which was also so powerful. And then I came back to Morea end of the year, just before New Year's Eve. And not only did I blast open into multidimensionality, I also became so sensitive to be even able to communicate telepathically with nature. And it's not always the case, but throughout this whole year of 2023, nature has been my guidance system almost. Like sometimes I look at a tree and I telepathically receive a message. Even though it's not words, it's like an inner knowing that I suddenly know. Okay. So, and I can feel the spirit, like the essence of universal consciousness in everything. Everything that's on this planet has the same source energy, has been created through source energy originally. So you can look at a flower and see yourself in your beauty and the love and God in this flower. And when I came back to Morea, something felt different. And the leaves, the ocean, the palm trees, everything almost whispered to me, you're not supposed to be here anymore. You're not supposed to be here right now. And I was like, what? No. Do you know what I gave up to live here? You know, my human kicked in. I was like, I'm not ready to let this go. And then they were like, no, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to spread the magic that we gave you with the world. And I don't want to sound entitled, but everybody who spends time with me knows I have a really strong connection to the spiritual realms. And what for me is normal is for someone who isn't connected yet very magical. The way I'm connected to nature and to the different realms is very special and very unique, and for me at least. And yeah, but it's almost like this battle between the soul and the human that we all know so well. And then how did it continue? Yeah, I was running into full hustle mode. I had a team. I just created a team of 4. I was like, this year we had a team meeting. This year we're going to make this amount of money. And this year we're going to impact 100,000 women, empowering them to come home to their feminine power. And I had this summit with 330 women, and I was launching my mastermind. And I had, in 1 month, almost every day I had a podcast episode, because I knew I was going to travel. So I had, until end of April, I had all the podcast episodes in January. So I went into full boss babe mode. I had a heartbreak with a man. And because I was so open and so connected, everything felt so intense. Like, it was an intense, short heartbreak, but the dramatic meltdowns in the car where you have to stop driving because you feel so much grief of the timeline collapsing that I just saw so clearly. And then my former best friend came to visit. We haven't seen each other in like 2 years. And in Morea, it was really fun. We had an amazing time. And then we went to Hawaii together. So we had planned to travel for a whole month. And then when I arrived in Hawaii, I was first in Maui to visit a friend with him. And we stayed with her and we went paddling with the whales. There were a lot of magical moments. But in general, when I think about Maui, it felt so stormy. Like, there was so much wind and so much rain, and everything just felt like a thunderstorm, like a huge storm swelling up. And it's also Hawaii whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." All the islands spit me out. And then we had a few crazy experiences. We ended up in a car accident. My friend forgot to tie up the paddle boards on the roof when we went swimming with the whales. So they flew off the car on the highway, and this guy came out of the car screaming at us like a GTA movie game. Life just felt so surreal. And then we went to Kauai, and then we had a huge fight, and I saw things that I haven't been seeing for 20 years. And then we kind of had a breakup with my best friend, and then we had planned to travel for another 2 weeks in Mexico, and at the airport we decided to separate ways. And this storm only stopped when I arrived back in Tulum. And I've always had it, I've traveled since I'm 1 year old, that specific places called me. Maybe you know the feeling too, that you're like, oh, I really feel like I need to go to Sri Lanka or whatever. And I've been to so many places around the world. But since that ceremony, it's almost like if I don't listen, life gets really uncomfortable. I'm like God's sub. Like I'm not even consciously making the decisions. It's like I know I have to be somewhere, and if I don't go, life gets really uncomfortable. And because now I'm connected to many sisters that are on the same journey, that experience similar things, and we all get drawn to the same places, it's like really wild. All of us have felt the call to come to Bali. Not all of us, but some of us. And we had no idea all of us were feeling the same. We just all ended up at the same time. We almost arrived exactly the same time, staying for an uncertain amount of time. And the same was with Tulum. So I arrived in Tulum and the storm finally stopped, and this magical vortex opened up again. And the first 2 months in Tulum, oh my God, I had the best time of my life. I was connected with these epic Avenger women that all had these spiritual superpowers. We just had the time of our lives. Every single day was full of magic and synchronicities, and one day I will write about it in my book. But it would explode the frame of this podcast episode if I dive into all of them. But the first 2 months were just pure magic, pure synchronicity, pure beauty and pleasure, and yeah, really, really magical. And then it shifted. I went to Temascal and made my own drums in the jungle, and then the next day my skin started getting a rash. And first I thought it's maybe dermatitis, I don't know. And then it was spreading, like within a day my whole leg was full of this rash, and it was itchy and painful. And I had just moved into a new place. Oh, I have forgotten something very important. Before I left Morea, a week before, someone tried to break into my bungalow. And this has always been my biggest fear, that I am in bed. Morea has this thing to manifest your biggest fear, so you can grow, but it's like fucking intense. So I was in bed, and then I heard steps around my house, and then the window opened in front of my eyes, and I just froze, and all of my fear got activated, and I was literally frozen. And then I ran to the window, and I was seeing him hiding under the window, and we saw him on video. He had a black mask, and he had already done some awful things on the island. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to listen, because otherwise it's even gonna get dangerous. And this was the last day I slept alone on the island. But that's connected to why I'm sharing this, because the first 2 months I was living with different sisters, and I was never really alone at home, so I didn't need to face that fear, even though I made sure to always lock. Like, I realized I'm more conscious about safety than I normally am. And then I moved to this gorgeous place that I manifested so quickly. I was like, I really would love to live alone again for a while, because that's when I just thrive being in my own energy, and I need that very much. I'm highly sensitive, and I absorb a lot of other people, and I just felt the desire after this 2 months to slow down a little. And then I had, when I went to Tulum in December the year before, I was at this beautiful woman's sound healing at home, and I came in, I was like, oh my God, I want to live here. This place is the most beautiful I've ever been. I'm a lot into interior design, and I just loved everything about this place. And then this place opened up, like right when I had the thought of having my own place. And then I even got it for free for 2 weeks, because I already paid for another place that I didn't really like. And then the woman was like, if you take care of my cat, don't tell anyone, I'm just sharing it publicly now, you can have it for free for 2 weeks. And then everything aligned magically, and I moved into this place. And then the vortex that was running up for 2 months paused, and the vortex down into the underworld opened up. And then first my scooter didn't work, so I couldn't really leave the place because it was a bit outside. And then my door lid didn't lock from the outside. I could lock it from the inside, but it didn't lock from the outside. The battery was probably empty. So for 3 days, I could not leave the house. I was literally forced to stay inside. Spirit was like, you gonna sit with this shit. And then I was cooking with a friend. The power went out. And then I noticed that I am avoiding going into my place when it's dark. And then I was like, oh, there's something there. So the first night when that happened, I slept at my friend's place. We were neighbors, so it didn't really matter that the door was open. And then the next day I was like, no, I'm going to look at this. I got candles, and I faced my fear, and I stayed in my house. And for 5 days, the power stayed off, and nobody could tell me why until today. First we thought it's because the bill wasn't paid, and it was only my apartment. All the other houses were full electricity. So until today, there's no logical reason why this happened. But after 5 days, it came back in a somatic session. So when the underground portal opened, I was like, okay, I have zero desire to do this by myself again, because the lonely wolf era is open, is gone. So I am going to get support. And I worked with 2 somatic practitioners that I deeply admire and love, and 1 trauma therapist and 1 energetic healer, all online. So I was going there. I was ready to face it. I was like, I have zero desire to take this fear with me when I'm a mom, and when I'm like, I always thought it's going to go away if I'm in a relationship and with a man. But honestly, even with men, if they're not at home, I still was feeling that fear. And I feel it's also a collective fear of women not feeling safe at home, and also from past lives. And then so many things from my childhood came up, where I was left alone at home and felt so much fear. And literally the same scenario, that our house, the power went off, and all the other houses across the street. The light was on, so I thought someone's in the house switching off the light. It was the same scenario, and we recreate them to heal them. So I was like, I'm facing them, and I went all in. And then after the Temazcal, a few days later, when the power was already back, my skin just was spreading all over my body, especially the right side, but mainly the legs, but also on my upper body, my arms. And it was this itchy, scratchy, thick, crusty layer, spots. And first it was bearable, but then after a week it just became unbearable. I couldn't sleep anymore. It was watering. I needed to put ice. I sometimes screamed at night because it was so painful. And I was just like, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do? Nobody knew what it was. I tried everything. And then my skin started to break out. And it started, like, I have dermatitis since I'm a little child. And it became really bad in puberty. And I got it under control when I started my spiritual journey about 13 years ago. When I stopped partying, when I transitioned from party Tanya to yoga Tanya, the yoga really helped, in meditation and nutrition. That's how I got into this, because I was so frustrated by all the doctors just giving me another cortisone cream and kicking me out after 1 minute. I left so many skin doctors crying. And for the first time in 8 years, the last rush was when I opened the yoga studio with my ex-boyfriend, because there was so much stress managing the studio, having an abusive relationship, having a full-time teacher job, that my skin was just breaking out. And then for 8 years, 7 years, I didn't have anything. And it just came back when my whole body was with this rash from the jungle. My dermatitis came back and my whole right hand was open and like crazy bad. Almost the worst outbreak I've ever had, on my neck, everywhere. And then how did it continue? Yeah, like in some somatic sessions, the moment the power came back after 5 days of it being off was with Lauren, my favorite somatic practitioner. And she guided me through a really dark underground journey. But with her, it doesn't feel like that. It was really like, I was like, oh, this is also me. And I saw these, I'm not getting into this, but really dark shadow aspects that I learned to accept and integrate. And then my heart opened. And literally in somatic sessions, you take your body through the journey. So you follow what your body intuitively wants to do. And she's really good at guiding me through that. So I was like crawling like a bowl, and then I was like, oh, my body's opening. And she's like, yeah, open your heart. And I opened my heart and leaned against the couch backwards, so my heart was supported. And literally in that moment, bing, the light came back. And things like that just kept on happening. And then I needed to do some collective healings for the masculine and for the feminine. And every single time I was smudging Kopal and forgiving the collective. Every single time, one time the electricity in the whole building, so not only in my house, but I think it's like 10 apartments, all of them went off. And you could call it coincidence, but I know it wasn't, because it was always in these moments. Or I was guiding an online program called Cracked Open. Every single time I talked about the light, a hammerjack noise appeared in the background, and there was literally no construction. Like weird things started happening. One time I woke up and my womb just turned into a black hole, and I was morphing into the universe, and I just became the universe again. And then when I came back into my body, the shower, the water, and the toilet and the sink were running for a few seconds. Really, really weird 3D glitches were happening. And then I didn't know what to do anymore. I was really, for about a month, I didn't see anyone. I locked myself in my house, went with my 4 healers into the depth of the underworld, and I completely recalibrated my energy. I even had to throw the water delivery guy out because I realized I create beautiful spaces, and being in my energy is a really beautiful thing. But I also realized sometimes I just need to be alone in there. So I literally had to push people out of my space because I needed that time to heal and to dive into some deep, 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 shadowy, dense aspects of my family. And yeah, and I don't want to go into the depth of it because there's also other people involved, but it just got worse from there. Like if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen my operation, the surgery that I had. So about a month before I flew to Germany, I had a little, what I thought was a lymph node on the right side of my throat, on my neck. And I've been noticing it for a while, but I have lymph nodes sometimes, so I wasn't really worried. But then it started growing every single day. And about a month before I was flying home, it became like, I would say maybe it was walnut size. And then it became bigger and bigger. And that's when I got freaked out. I tried every single thing to heal it naturally. Oh my God, I literally tried everything. And every single person had a different opinion. So I had a water fast, a juice cleanse, these bitter tinctures for every organ possible. I had infrared and acupuncture. I had an energetic surgery. I can't even remember, but for a whole month I tried everything. I drank the whole lemon with the peel mixed. Maybe you've heard about it. It's really good for the lymphatic system, but obviously it wasn't the lymphatic system. So it was growing. I had my skin not getting better. I had this giant thing on my neck growing that nobody knew what it was. And I was just really deep in the underworld. Some friendships fell away that I just thought were new sisters for life. Like everything was crumbling. All of my sisters left Tulum. And I found myself in a really dark place, not knowing what's going to happen. And then I went to a family constellation. It was one of the first times I decided to get out again. And then the doctor, the facilitator made me see, if you've never been to a family constellation, there's different people representing different parts of your family. For example, you can choose a woman for your mother and a man for your father, or can even be a woman for your father, someone intuitively that feels aligned. And then they literally become that person and get information from the quantum field that can give you information. And my whole life, I have been searching for answers in my family. I know there's a lot of density, there's a lot of darkness that nobody speaks about. There's so many buried dark secrets in my family. And I'm like the Sherlock Holmes that wants to spread light in there and know all the answers. And my whole life I've been wondering why my mom is the way she is. I was always wondering, why is she so emotional and unavailable? Why is she so, why can't she show a glimpse of emotion or affection to me? Why do I even have the feeling she doesn't even care about me? And then my whole life I've been searching for the answer. And in this family constellation, I saw why. And again, I'm not going into the details because I also want to keep her privacy. I saw what happened to her when she was little, and it's dark and it's brutal, and it made me understand a lot of things. Also, the work that I'm sharing made a lot of sense because I'm always sharing what I'm guided from spirit, and sometimes I don't understand why, but it made a lot of sense in that moment. And this opened another underground portal. So I went home from this, and for the first time I saw why my mom is the way she is. But again, I was with this dark information and I didn't know what to do with it. So it felt like my whole world was exploding into 1,000 pieces, and the ashes are slowly like floating around. That's how my life felt. And this was just before I went back to Germany. And then everybody was like, you need to see a doctor. This is like getting so big, and just see a doctor. And I didn't want to, because I didn't trust the doctors there, and I wanted to wait until I'm in Germany, which was already planned. And then I saw a doctor, and he looked at me and he said, oh, you have a tumor. You will need surgery, and it will be very difficult and life-risking because it's really attached to your main arteries. And all I heard was, you will die. You might die. So he left, and for a full 24 hours, I needed to fully surrender to the fact that I might die. And this was probably the toughest experience of my life. When I took one selfie in that moment, in that day, and I don't recognize myself. Like, I didn't understand the word anymore. I feel like the fear of death is the most intense fear. And my intention for last year was joy and connection, so I didn't understand the word. I was like, what the fuck, universe? I said joy and connection, not death. And like, what is this? But of course, what keeps us away from joy is the fear of death, one of many. So I needed to fully surrender to the fact that I might die. And then I meditated a lot with Joe Dispenza, and after 24 hours I decided that this is not my timeline, and I only focused on the positive. I was like, I envisioned myself in perfect health, and I asked for a sign, and I have a really strong connection to the bluebirds in Mexico. If you've been to Tulum, you might have seen them. They're really cute. And they were all around my house all the time. And I said, if I find or receive a blue feather today, then I'm going to be fine. And I mean, what are the odds? I was a few months in Mexico and I did not see a blue feather once. And my neighbor Jackie came in the evening and she said, I went to this market yesterday and I got you this blue feather. So I was really divinely guided and supported, even in the abyss of darkness. And then I went home, and still, for the first time in 2 years, I went home to Munich, to Germany. And I still didn't know what it was. I just decided that it's good and that it's all going to be fine. So the first day after I came to Munich, I went to the hospital and I had a ultrasound, and then the doctor was really sweet and she said, oh, it's just a cyst. It's nothing to worry about. You will need surgery, but it's not dangerous. It's like a regular surgery. Don't worry. And then she gave me an appointment in a month from that date. And I had my retreat. I was guiding my retreat with this huge cyst that by that point was 6.5 centimeters, which is like your fist. And I had another retreat a few days later, but the day the woman left, I was in so much pain. The cyst was infected. I could not sleep. I couldn't breathe anymore properly. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. So I did the impossible. And I called my parents, and they picked me up to my surprise and took me home to them. So this was the first time seeing my parents in 2 years. And I was really grateful because it's not what I expected that they would pick me up, but they did, and it was really nice. And before the retreat, I also saw my grandparents. And yeah, so without going into the details, what I took away from all of this, even if you know what happened to someone who's treating you bad. Like my mom and my granddad both were emotional abusive when I was a child, and they're not aware of it. And it took me a long time to see the truth. And, you know, when you're like in the beginning of your healing journey and you're spiritual bypassing all the resentment and the rage and you just want to be love and light. So you like, I forgive them because they didn't know any better, but it's from your mind. And you skip the whole somatic process. And in this time in the underworld, I really saw that even though I understand what happened to them and I understand their trauma, I also saw that you still have a choice who you choose to be in this lifetime. So if you imagine you're this spark of God, everyone has this spark of God inside of them, the pure light, pure love. And then we have this trauma that happens, that builds a layer around it. And the more trauma, the thicker the layer. And sometimes it takes us a good imagination to know that behind that thick layer, there's still the spark of God in them. And what I saw is, or what I understood is, even though I understand their trauma and I justified it in the past because this happened to them, they are the way they are, they're not aware, forgive them. I was like, and it became really aware in a somatic session also, where I literally saw this thick layer of trauma around my granddad and who he chooses to be, that the spark of God almost has no chance to go down, like to get through this wall of trauma. And the version that he chooses to be in this lifetime, even though our souls love each other, and that's something good to know, that if you have challenging family members, these souls love you the most in the spiritual realms, because they have to love you so much to show you this part of you. They have to love you so much to be this bitchy to you in this lifetime, because in the essence we are all unconditional love and light. But to be brave enough to choose this role in your life means this soul, you have actually a really strong connection and bond to the soul. But in this lifetime you just chose the karmic pattern of whatever, an abusive grandfather. So when I saw who he chooses to be, like this thick layer, and the words he uses and the energy he uses and the way he treats me and the way he tries to put me down, I was really disgusted by who he chooses to be. So beyond the love and light, just forgive everyone because they have a reason. I was like, yeah, I see that, and I still am disgusted by who he is. And of course he also has good traits, but by the way he shows up, I am really, like, it's a boundary for me. And I feel like in the spiritual communities, not everyone, but there's this thing of, oh, you have to be good with your family, otherwise it's a sign that you're not evolved. I don't agree with that, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is finally setting a boundary and finally saying no and choosing yourself. So for my own sanity, I needed to cut with 2 family members last summer. And it wasn't easy. It was painful. I needed to have really uncomfortable conversations. I needed to be really clear in my boundaries, not only speaking, but only showing up. There was just one portal after the other happening. And it almost felt like, so when I came home from the first retreat, I had to cancel my second retreat. I had to cancel 2 festivals that I was supposed to go. I fully surrendered, it was my year of surrender. Almost every plan that I made did not work out. And then my surgery needed to be preponed. And it was really hard to get an appointment, but then I got one. And it was a huge hassle with the insurance, the paperwork and stuff. And the day of the surgery, so the day before the surgery, we were on the phone with the insurance, and the doctor wanted the insurance to pay before the surgery. And I went home and I didn't know if the money went through. Wasn't even sure if they pay for it. I have a really good insurance. I pay a lot of money for it, but if it's like a sudden thing, they were not prepared. And then the doctor said, come anyway tomorrow morning. We will see if the money comes through. Don't eat, don't drink. Come at 6:30. I was in the hospital at 6:30. And then he just came at 8, looked at me, and he said, the money isn't there. I'm not going to touch you. I was like, holy shit, what is happening? It was my first surgery ever, my first full narcosis. So I was already like super scared and alone. I went alone to the hospital and I was sitting there for hours, not knowing if I'm even going to have surgery, having this huge baby head, big cyst on my throat that's like, a lot to be with. In the beginning, I was hiding it because I was annoyed that everybody would talk about it. It was a huge initiation into my inner beauty. In the end, I was like almost showing it. I was walking confidently with this huge thing, and I was like, it doesn't even touch my inner beauty. So the moment he said that, he's like, I'm not going to touch you. The money isn't there. I looked at my bag, and there was a bee on my bag. And that's the moment when I knew it's going to be fine, because a psychic once told me that my grandma, she died many years ago, she's with me. She's like one of my guides. And she comes in the form of a bee. So when I was sitting in the hospital and I saw the bee, I was like, okay, I'm going to be fine. And there was also 444s everywhere. Every single day last year, 444 has been with me. I saw a bus with the number 444 just before I entered the hospital. So I knew it's fine, but it was still intense. So around 1 p.m., the nurse came and she said, the money is here, you can go down. So I went on this bed and was driving down. And then the narcosis nurses were like, where were you? And I was like, I don't know, there was a problem. And they all knew I'm the woman that lives on this little island. And then, there was this really sweet woman giving me the narcosis, and she was touching my hand, and she's like, just take a deep breath and fully surrender. And then I took a deep breath in, and all I remember was like this warm liquid. It was almost painful running into my left arm. And then it was such a pleasurable experience. My whole backside, my whole back muscles, I feel for the first time were fully melting and surrendering. And it's almost felt like I'm melting into the bed. And that's all I remember. And then I woke up and I had this huge bowl on my, like Band-Aid bowl on my throat, and I thought they couldn't remove it. And there were a lot of risks. So they told me, if one won't cut and you can't move your tongue or your face is paralyzed. So the first thing was moving my face, and I was so grateful everything went good. And then I had almost a week in the hospital, and it was full of duality. None of my family visited me, even though for the first time I was super close. But a lot of friends came and they brought me blueberries, and it just was a really intense time full of beauty and magic, and also of harsh truth and pain and seeing things clearly, if that makes sense. And of course I skipped a lot of details. Like there's also a lot of funny details. One thing that just came into my mind was when I did the MRT before the surgery, so they can make sure there's nothing dangerous in the cyst, that it's just a regular cyst. You get on this bed and you drive into this, I don't know what it's called, but you almost like a tube thing, and it makes loud noises, and you need a needle in your arm for the contrast substance to flow into your veins so they can see every single thing in your body. And I'm afraid of needles a bit, but I normally only have problems when I get blood taken in the morning before I've eaten. Otherwise, it's fine. And then, so the only pair of shoes I owned for this whole trip, this whole year, was my mermaid holographic slippers. So I went into a hospital with my mermaid slippers, and I was a really cute doctor setting the needle. And I already told him I'm not so good with needles, I'm looking away. But I have eaten, so I wasn't worried. He put the needle, and I was like, ooh, this was intense. And I was like, oh, it's hot in here, isn't it? And he's like, oh, nurses, bring the bed. And I was like, no, I'm fine. It's just really hot and sweaty. And the next thing I remember is being on the bed with one of my slippers. I lost one of my mermaid slippers. And the doctor told me very proudly, and he told the whole station, everybody knew me by then, that I fainted in his arms, and he carried me like a queen on the bed. And when I picked up the pictures from the MRT, even the woman at the reception knew who I was. She's like, oh, you're the woman fainting in the doctor's arms. So there were a lot of funny and magical moments in between as well. And then after the surgery, almost a week in the hospital, I did not touch the food there. I also had a look into the health system again. For me, prison, school, and health system have a very similar frequency, and it's not, would open another conversation. However, I decided to go to Ibiza. I had this huge scar, and I managed to postpone one doctor appointment because I needed to go back to the hospital like 10 times to take care of the scar and everything. And I also got my nose operated. So the doctor was very insistent on also doing my nose, because I have I used to have, I never knew what it feels like to properly breathe through the nose. I always had polyps and a not even nose wall, so they made that too, which means I had a 3-hour surgery, and the breathing tube was on my vocal cords, which means I wasn't able to speak for a week. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't taste. And they took these, horrible things out of my nose. And I had, it was not a beautiful thing. I always said I have aliens coming out of my nose, like so many wild things when it was healing. So this was the surgery part. After that, I cut with the second family member, and then I had an amazing time in Ibiza, and that's when it finally went from the underground back up. I felt like we had a magical week in Ibiza. I really fell in love with the island. I visited 2 friends that I met in Mexico, and we had a beautiful, beautiful time with amazing events, and And in total, I was horizontal for 3 months, and I couldn't be who I was before. I was literally forced to stop everything I was doing. I wasn't able to continue my podcast. I wasn't able to hold my team members. So I went from having 4 team members to completely pausing my business for 3 months. And if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're working for yourself, you're not employed, you know that that's also one of the biggest fears, that what if I'm not able to work? What will happen financially, and what will, and then it happened. For 3 months, I was not able to work and make money, but I still had expenses to pay. I was traveling, and I had all these, expenses, and my money was going down. But the message that I got during these 3 months, I couldn't work out also. I was literally laying in bed most of the time for 3 months, not working, not doing anything, not even being there for anyone, because I needed all of my energy to heal myself. And that was a huge identity crash. I was like, who am I if I'm not a healer, if I'm not a mentor, if I'm not a friend that's there for everything? Who am I beyond all of this? Who am I without a business? And of course, I was making jewelry in between, but I wasn't able to do what my identity was attached to. And then I had the most horrible birthday of my life because this was still in Mexico. I don't even want to go into the details, but I became very clear. At the end of the day, I was screaming into my pillow. I was like, what the fuck, universe? I don't understand. And it basically showed me there was a woman. I went to a cenote spontaneously with 4 women, and I rarely knew them because all of my friends have left Tulum. Also, my biggest fear was to be alone on my birthday with sisters I don't know, and also got manifested. It was like the year of the biggest fears in my face. And I was at the cenote. It was super touristy, and there was this woman I didn't really know well, but I said, of course she can come. My friend asked if she can bring her. And then she had 3 trauma releases in front of me. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, it's my birthday. I told them I have no energy. And I just want to have fruits and flowers. I also didn't bring them, but they didn't even bring fruits and flowers. And then I just wanted to go home at some point. And when we went into the car, she had another release. And she said, I just need to release something. And then I lost it. I was like, no, you can release it outside or at home, but I can't be around that energy anymore. And then I came home and screamed into my pillow. I was like, what the fuck? Why in my birthday? This is horrible. This was probably the darkest days of this portal. And then I realized, I'm really grateful for her actually now, because this was when I realized, oh, I actually don't enjoy trauma healing. I'm good at it because I've been there and I know how to hold space, and my whole life I've been there for everyone dumping their emotions on me. At least I get paid now, but actually I don't enjoy this. And that's when my whole business crashed. Not even crashed. I when you see truth and suddenly you can't unsee and your life needs to change. So in one of those somatic sessions, I found a part of me that was almost drowning and trying to save everyone in my family. And because I couldn't save them until today, I don't try anymore, but I tried a lot and I couldn't in the past. That's what was the driver to create this business of trying to help all these women. And at least I succeeded. Like they were willing to do the work and they had great successes. But when I found this part that was drowning and I saved her, the desire to hold space for trauma work was completely gone. I switched from the pendulum of holding space for everyone, being there for everybody, going into the depth, having almost exorcisms in my sessions, doing shadow work and trauma healing, to the extreme opposite. And I couldn't, until today, I'm very sensitive, and I am so sensitive to emotional dumping that I can't energetically even be close to that. And then, of course, I went back to my family where this is the norm of communicating, of aggressive, nonverbal communication, of slamming doors and crushing plates and not speaking about things and just complaining behind people's back. And I needed to call these people out. Even if it's my own mother, I needed to call her out every single day I was living with them. I was like, I am not available for this anymore. If you feel that way, it has nothing to do with me. You either tell it to that person or you deal with yourself. But I have zero desire to be dumped on with this bullshit. Because you don't take responsibility for your part. You just blame everyone. So, yeah, many, many portals, many, many uncomfortable conversations. But then it went back up. Ibiza really opened the portal of magic again. And then I had another month in Munich. I was there totally for 2 months with the surgery, but it felt like 10 lifetimes. And I feel like before, I feel very complete with Germany. Even though it's beautiful in the summer, I do feel complete with the frequency over there. It's really dense and different after being away for 2 years. And then I moved to this beautiful community, and the day I moved out from my parents, I just could not tolerate my mom's behavior anymore, and she wasn't willing to have a conversation. So I told my dad, I'm going to leave tomorrow, and it took everything out of me, but I told him I would love to just see you before I leave. And I've been wanting to say this for probably a decade. I would have loved to have a relationship with my dad, but because I was so afraid of what my mom, that she would be disappointed, or she would feel outcasted, or that she would say no, or would get angry, I never dared to ask. So it was huge, and he was hugging me, and I was crying. It was really healing. And even though we don't really have a real relationship, we have a real strong connection. And he feels me, even though he can't talk about emotions. He is very empathetic. And then the first time he did not, I asked him 2 times, and then he just ignored it. But then I was like, no, I'm not giving up. I want to see him. And then the second time I invited him, he came to the community I was living in on the countryside of Munich. And we had our first meeting, just the 2 of us, and it was really healing and beautiful. And yeah, that was my time in Europe. And then I flew to Burning Man, and I think I have to create another podcast episode just about Burning Man. Because what the fuck was that? Magic and mud, are the 2 words. And energetic orgasms. And then we flew to Morea. So the 2 sisters that I met in Tulum and Ibiza and Burning Man came to Morea, and we rented the big house. And there were a lot of friendship portals. One friend had to leave early. And then there was the retreat with James, Wild Soul, magical, beautiful, probably the most favorite retreat I ever guided. We swam with the whales, and we had such an incredible week together. And then I think I had 1 week on my own, and then my friend Jess stayed with me. We created some magical content, had a lot of fun. I had my first collection shooting with Ryan and Poeti, which was, oh my god, so beautiful. And I cried tears of joy that this is actually happening. And then what happened after? Yeah, I already had Egypt planned when I was in Mexico. So Egypt has been calling the whole year. Isis has been channeling through me many, many times, and it was really clear. The first thing I found in Burning Man on the sand was a magnet of Isis with Egypt, so I knew I had to go there. And there was this retreat with 2 amazing women. So I flew from Morea to the exact opposite side. If you don't know that, if you dig a hole through Morea, you end up in Cairo at the pyramids. So I flew to the exact opposite side and even guided. I stopped for 2 days to get jewelry supply, and I stayed at the community again. And I was even guiding an event there with her. And this is something I would never do again after a 50-hour flight with a jet lag, to guide an event before going to Egypt. I don't know what got me doing this, but it was beautiful, but a lot for me. And then so many things. Yeah, Egypt. Yeah, oh my god. I feel like I don't even want to go, like, to share about Burning Man in Egypt today, because that would be complete different episodes on their own. But then after Egypt, during Wild Soul, I got the intuitive hit to, like, I just felt I need to go back to Bali. And then I listened and I had already booked a flight from Egypt directly to Bali. And then I flew to Bali. And the day I arrived, and I thought I'm finally going to integrate this whole year, I arrived, construction every morning, 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. So I needed to be out every single day. And I had a hard time doing that because all my body was craving was just to be in bed and integrate everything that has happened and to have me time and silence. And yeah, and the same day I arrived, the woman that was staying in my bungalow, she has stayed there twice before. And even my landlord knows her. She's calm. She was calm and paid rent. So I was like, okay. And then shit went down. So my year has already been movie-like, but this is like the peak that happened. So I arrived. I couldn't hermit. I was out. And then she literally went crazy. My neighbor, she's the most amazing angel, and she is taking care of Looney, and I love her. She texted me every day what's happening, because at some point this woman didn't even reply to me anymore. For 2 weeks she didn't pay rent, but she threw all of my things away. So my friend texted me, she's throwing all of your crystals into the ocean, all of your shells, all of your plants. She's screaming, she's taking 3-hour showers. Every morning I woke up with anxiety, what's going down today? So my temple space got invaded, which felt horrible, because I put so much love into creating this temple in Morea, which is not easy because it's on the other side of the world. Everything is super expensive, nothing is available, but I made it super beautiful. And then she just threw everything into the ocean. I did not even believe what was happening. And then everything I told her not to do, she did. I was like, don't get my landlord involved with this. And my landlord called me, I've been talking with her. She told me you're doing satanic rituals in the bungalow. And I was like, what is even happening? So it was very movie-like, very traumatic. And then I found this beautiful place, not in Uluwatu in Bali, where I thought I'm going to stay, but in Ubud, where I stayed a few years ago, and I did not enjoy it. But I arrived at this beautiful place, and the trees told me, you're going to be here for a while. And I was just planning to be here for 2 days. And the moment I made the decision, everything aligned. My friend was like, if you like it, you can rent it. I had no idea it's available. And then life started to flow again, and I released. I needed to completely release Morea, and I'm still kind of in the void. I don't know where I'm gonna end up and how my path is unfolding. I'm taking it day by day right now, but I might potentially leave Morea. So that's my update from 2023. I took the last 2 months to really integrate and to just be. That was also the message I got during these 3 months, just be. And it has been the most beautiful remembrance of my worth, of my soul essence beyond the conditioning, because literally every single thing my identity was attached to got stripped away. My home, my health, my family, my friends, my finances, everything got stripped away. But that's when I found my true essence. And I feel soul creations is a huge part of what I'm birthing through that. So after these 2 months of integration, the floodgates of creativity have opened up again, and I'm currently creating an anointment collection, which means it's gonna be a really special blend for breast massage, for womb and yoni, for face, goddess face glow, solid rose perfume. That's what I'm currently creating. I'm creating my own goddess clothing collection, very priestessy skirts and tops, and also my jewelry, of course, gets support here. I'm making altar candles, beautiful pieces that are intended to call in your spirit baby or just to honor your body temple. There's going to be different options available, and right now I'm just creating for the sake of creating. I'm not even attached to selling. I feel like I'm healing through this creation process of what has happened last year, and I'm slowly grounding everything in, because it's been, as you might have witnessed, a huge expansion, so much expansion. And that's why also the ocean right now doesn't feel aligned. And I would never have thought I would say these words would come out of my mouth, because I'm a mermaid. I love the ocean, and I thought I don't want to be without the ocean a single day in my life. But when I was in Uluwatu, not only was it so noisy with all the construction and so many people, has changed so much since COVID, but also I don't need expansion right now. I need grounding, and I have this gorgeous place, and I'm so grateful and I'm so happy here, and it's really soothing, and I really enjoy being here. And yeah, this is my little update. Of course, I forgot many things, but the general theme. And yeah, so I burned everything to the ground last year. I deleted all of my online programs. My podcast is still there, but I'm not going back to weekly episodes. I'm only gonna give you updates every now and then. There might be an episode upcoming soon about my energetic orgasm journey, because this is something I would love to share. I would love every single one to experience this, because life is just so much better. Life is not the same after you dive into this world. And I might guide one last retreat before I also say goodbye for a while in Ibiza, end of May, which will be all about pleasure and very orgasmic. So no more shadow work, no more trauma healing. It's all about pleasure and beauty, and really embodying your sensuality, your divine feminine power, coming home to your soul, living in alignment with your truth, feminine leadership. The pleasure and beauty codes is what my life is all about. So if you feel called, send me a message. I'm only inviting. It's going to be a very special group, so it has to be very aligned for all of us. So just send me a message of if you want to know more about it. And yeah, just make sure to follow me on Instagram. There are going to be a lot of beautiful things coming out very soon about soul creations. And other than that, I think that was everything that wanted to be shared, and I hope I can sleep soon, because it's 2:30 now and I'm still awake. And I'm wishing you a wonderful, wonderful day or night wherever you're listening to this. And I'm sending you so much love.